So, as I was driving home from Supergirl that I just saw tonight, I saw something that made me remind myself of this movie. I saw someone through the drive-through of Whataburger at 10 p.m. at night, and all I could think to myself is, that's an interesting choice. So, I just got back from Supergirl, and while I think the movie has its definite flaws and stuff, I don't think it's a terrible movie and that you should like avoid go seeing it. I think it's actually fairly decent in some spots and stuff, and has actually some good charm that I actually quite enjoyed. I think our main cast and stuff is really good. Like I think Millie Alec does a really good job as Supergirl. Jason Momoa as Lobo is definitely just what he should have been from the start, and you can even tell in this movie that he puts his whole heart and soul into this character, and you can just see that this is who he just wants to play and he is having so much fun. And I honestly think he kind of does take away from the movie, and not a bad way, but just more of like damn, he kind of shines in this movie in a really fun way. And aside from some of the casting and stuff for our main heroes and stuff, I do have some negatives, but I'll get into that a little later. But I want to say that, the movie starts off, I would say, fairly strong and kind of interesting, with it being, it's Kara's 23rd birthday and she's out there celebrating and stuff. And I really appreciate how they kind of dive into like the abilities of like the Kryptonians and stuff, being able to be like, oh, yeah, this is what they're weak to. This is what's dangerous for them, like with the different suns and stuff. I think that's really good world building and stuff for James Gunn's DCU. However, it's when we get to our main villain that is kind of my my first issue with this movie. What's his name? Krem of the Yellow Hills is he's not that good. I mean, I just want to start off with his design. I'm kind of very confused about what his design was. He kind of feels like a like a character that was left off the like back lot of like a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and it kind of feels like that. Like the entire like the whole group of villains and stuff feel like they are just like part of like those like kind of like an offshoot of those Ravagers from like the Guardians of the Galaxy that you just kind of see, and they're more of just mild and like nuisances than like these big bads and stuff. Like with them and all their weird little like beads on the face and all the like weird etchings and stuff. When I'm not someone who went into this movie reading the comic and stuff, but after it, I briefly scrolled through a couple of the comics, because I mean the nice thing is that DC put the comics online that this movie is based off of for free. So if you haven't checked those out, I would actually highly recommend it and stuff. Uh they're drawn like really gorgeously, and I think that the story seems to be a lot a lot better told. And you know you can tell in this movie that it has the idea of what it wanted to be, but there does feel like a lack of either execution on the directing side or just the writing side, where they had to trim so much of this story to where it's not the same story in the end. And I mean, I'm not going to get into too big of spoilers in this video and stuff. And I mean, if people would like to hear more spoilers and stuff and me kind of go into more detail, let me know down in the comics, because I would love to talk about this movie more, because I don't think it's bad. I actually think it's a quite interesting second movie into James Gunn's DCU, and this is also the first one that I believe he did not direct or write. And you can kind of tell that there's hints of them trying to mimic and kind of try to capture that James Gunn style and stuff, whether it's with the music or with kind of like similar art style and kind of similar directing style and almost like designs and stuff. As I've said, with the villain character designs. But the one thing I just cannot get out of my head after seeing this movie is that while the fights and stuff were really cool and I really enjoyed like the choreography and stuff, and I don't remember ever feeling like there was like too much shaky cam or any of that. Like I don't like I mean, I'm not someone who's like, extremely bothered by shaky cam to start with. I mean, if it's really bad, I'll call it out, but like I don't think it was, horrendous in this movie. But the one thing that like I just could not get behind is why are the fights and a half of this movie so damn dark? I feel like I mean, and I was in a Dolby theater, like, they they crank the brightness up and they crank the color up on, these Dolby screenings, and still like I cannot imagine if you were to go see this movie at like, casual movie theater and stuff, where, projector might be a little worn out and it might be at its end. I don't know how you can see anything in this movie. Like, holy cow. I don't know if it has to do with like the budget or concerns about, you know, designs. And I mean, there's a lot of practical effects and a lot of practical costumes that, you know, in this movie are really cool. And I think that, for a comic that doesn't have as many, wacky like character designs and stuff, I think that, they did a really good job with like all these aliens and stuff, and like fleshing out that like this is like a cross the galaxy kind of adventure in a way. But man, you can't see like like there's a couple of fights, like there's a fight halfway through the movie that includes Lobo, and it's like I was squinting to kind of watch like that fight and stuff, because it's like I feel like I'm like, and I had my glasses on, I swear, you couldn't see anything, which made me really happy at the end that the final fight, which is, not to get into spoilers, but the final fight does something that not many superhero movies tend to do these days and stuff, which is have their final fight in the daylight. I know Superman did it recently, and a couple other movies have had daylight final fights and stuff. But I was really happy to see that this movie, like the final fight, is really bright. It's colorful. She's wearing the suit and stuff. That's another thing. Not to get into too deep of spoilers or anything, but she only wears the suit right at the end, which is different from what seems to be the comics, where she's wearing her suit the entire time. And I won't get into too much of spoilers for the ending and stuff, but they do change the ending a little bit from what I've seen in the comics. And I, as someone who has not read the comics and stuff, but I see how they keep the same gist and plot of the story with kind of changing it up, but I'm not sure how I fully feel about it yet. This is something that I'd probably have to sleep on. But in the end, it was a movie and stuff, and it had a definite, start, middle, and end that I thought was at least, somewhat enjoyable. The the final part of the action sequence and stuff has this one song in it that I thought was just a horrendous choice. Like, it had me like just cackling and stuff, and I was like genuinely flabbergasted that that's the choice they went with and stuff. I would have much more appreciated just like a standard theme or something like that, even if it would have been generic, like a generic theme or something like a Supergirl theme. I think that the final song choice in this movie is just, they if they were to go back and you know change one thing mid screening of this movie, I think it should be the final song choice, because it kind of detracts the whole big swelling of the moment and stuff in a way that's quite distracting. But if I was to have to give this movie a rating, and I've never done a rating before for my channel and stuff, and I mean, I'm kind of branching out and stuff with what I do on my channel besides just Let's Plays and stuff, because I want to get more into, yapping about other things that I really enjoy and stuff. But if I was to have to give it a rating, I'd probably give it, uh, it's definitely a good bite. So I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10 on whatever rating scale, where I call this channel Jockodile. So, it's like a crocodile. So I'd give it like 7 out of 10 teeth, you know. It's almost a full smile. It's nothing big or you know, uh, you know, something you have to go rush out. But I would definitely say, box office wise, this movie might this movie might get screwed, and being stuck between Toy Story 5, which was just spectacular and stuff, and I'm probably not going to do a review for it. But that movie, was amazing, and in between that and Minions and Monsters, which looks dumb but fun as hell. So I definitely will probably be going to see that, but I probably won't do a review for it. But having this movie stuck in between two very heavy hitting brands of animation might be a a doomsday for this movie at the box office and stuff, which is very unfortunate stuff because I don't think it's deserving of any like horrendous box office numbers. But in the end, I think if this movie would have came out the same time as Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day, I think this movie would have probably done so much better because that movie, I mean, that movie's a whole different video to kind of go into. But yeah, I think that this movie is going to have a little bit of a bumpy box office numbers and stuff, and I think that it's still a good start for James Gunn's DCU and stuff. And they showed a trailer for Clayface and stuff, which I was sitting in that theater and there was people who looked uncomfortable at that movie, but I am just a weird movie kid, and I was really excited for that movie. So I'll be excited to see that this fall and stuff because it's got very much the Substance vibes, which I thought was a really cool movie. But that's enough yapping for me. Those are my thoughts on Supergirl and stuff. Thank you so much. If you have any thoughts or opinions about the movie, or you'd like me to review anything else, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe and check out more of my reviews and different gaming videos. Until next time. Yep. Well, that's it.